Hi, everybody. Welcome to our January episode of our KML Foundation Table Talk vlog and podcast. Happy New Year. I'm Paul Stamiska, your estate plan counselor, and this is a follow-up episode from one that we did back in November. We were talking about probate, and if you watch that episode, you might remember at the end we talked about what if somebody doesn't have a will? What happens then? Today, I've got a special guest who's returned, Attorney Gromowski, to talk about just that issue of what do you do if there is no will? You know, back in November, we talked about the probate process. I think some people maybe were a little overwhelmed with the details that were involved, but at the end we said, well, what happens if somebody either has what they think is a legal will and it isn't, or they just don't have a will at all? And I thought there was value in maybe spending a little bit more time on that. And so Attorney Gromowski is back with us today, and thank you for coming to maybe carry on a little bit more of the discussion here.
Thank you for having me back again today.
I'm going to start just with a little review. So 2 months ago, we talked about the probate process. Can you just summarize briefly what the probate process is?
Sure. The probate process is finding the will, getting it into the hands of the court, and then the court determining personal representatives, trustees, guardians, and then at that point the personal representative takes over. They pay out all the final bills, find all of your assets, collect all of the debts owed to you, and then finally the money goes off to the beneficiaries during that time period.
And if I remember, we talked about this can be kind of costly. There can be some length of time involved in all this. So maybe not the most positive thing people were looking forward to hearing about. I've got a solution. If wills have to go through probate, let's not have a will. What happens then?
Then it really gets hectic. It's going to take a lot longer in court, first of all, and the judge is going to look at the statutes. So there's statutes that are already set up that says who's going to be your beneficiaries, what they're going to get, what they're not going to get. So really, you lose control. You have no say who's going to get your funds or your assets. So it's really important to have that will so that directs the court what happens rather than just trusting what the statutes already say.
So we've got now the court making all the decisions. Does that include maybe guardians of minor children?
Yes, it does. Minor children, disabled children, who's going to manage that money for the children until they turn of age?
What if I wanted to give something in my estate for my church? I've always supported my church. Will the courts make sure that my church gets some of my assets too?
No. The statutes do not allow for that. The statutes really are just family members, and they have to be bloodline family members. So if you have a spouse or children, they'll be the first to inherit, or grandchildren, and they're all going to inherit equally. So it's, if one child took care of you at the end and you wanted them to get more, that's not going to happen. If you wanted your church to get more, that's not going to happen. So it's not an easy process because the judge gets to decide according to the statutes.
You know, Joanne, I remember in our last episode we talked about the personal representative and the responsibility of that person. So if you didn't name that person in a will, how does the personal representative get chosen?
So the personal representative, the judge is going to reach out to the family. Maybe they're good at doing things, maybe they're not, but the judge is going to determine, okay, this is the person that's going to be in charge of it. And that might right there cause a lot of conflict between the family themselves because everyone wants to be in charge of it, maybe until they find out how much work it is, but they want to be in charge. And that's when people start complaining the most, is when the judge is making these decisions and the family is no longer able to make those decisions.
Boy, you bring up something really important. I think if I were to pass away, I would want my family, my loved ones, to make the decisions about the assets that I'm leaving. If I understand correctly, you're telling me the family doesn't have any control.
No, the family has no control. So if you told them, this is what I want to happen to my estate after I pass away, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a he said, she said kind of thing, and the judge is going to have to determine what's best. And really, they're going to end up having to look at the statute. And the statute plainly says this is what's going to happen to it. So if you already had in mind, I want this couple to be guardian of my children, that might never happen because you have two different families that are fighting over who's going to be the guardian, and they all think that they know what's best. And they might have all had different conversations with you. So you might have said something to one family member and you said something to another family member. And that's where it all gets tied up in litigation. And that's why it tends to cost more when you don't have a will, because everyone's fighting in court, unfortunately.
I'm going to challenge maybe not what you said, but what some people might think. Like I said earlier, if a will has to go through probate, don't have a will. Wouldn't that be easier? Of course not. Other people might say, I'll let the court make the decision. They'll probably make a better decision than my family anyway. What's wrong with the state's asset distribution plan? Can't I just trust the state to do it and do it right?
I wouldn't trust the state to do it right. They really are just stuck with it. So if you have a disabled individual, as an example, now if they have to inherit this money, they might be taken off of their government benefits, which includes their medical. So that's a problem right there. Maybe the kids are going to get all their assets when they turn 18 years old. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe they're going to go out and spend it because they have peer pressure from their friends, and that's normally what happens when you're 18 years old. Or maybe the person has drugs, alcohol, spending problems. They could be an adult. They could be someone that's in jail. There's lots of different situations, and there's so many individual variables that the statutes do not speak to all that. It's just, here it is, go do it, and you're stuck with that.
Well, and you know, I'm not an attorney, but when I read the statutes, it's very clear, but it's very simple. And I could see the problems that could raise.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, you know, when we have a lot of family farms out here and stuff, there isn't provisions of, okay, this is who gets that family farm because they've now worked on it all their life. No, it's going to be divided up between everyone, whether or not they worked on it or not. Or if you have other real estate that you want to go to one family member up north and you want the family farm to go to someone else, it's not going to be that. It's going to be divided equally and clear, which is not necessarily fair to a lot of the family members. So it does cause a lot of problems and heartaches that way.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to say probably something pretty strongly, and you can agree or disagree. I've worked enough with families. Some have created a good estate plan, some have not. And when they don't create the plan, it's not because they don't care about their family. Of course they love their family. I would never suggest anything otherwise. But by not creating a will and really a full comprehensive plan, this is going to sound harsh, but I think it is one of the most selfish things you can do.
Part of it is, I don't think you're wrong 100%. Part of the problem is people are so uneducated in what really happens with a will. They have this idea that, okay, you know, no matter what it is, it's just automatically going to go to the family member, no problem, I don't need a judge to do it, that's my plan all along. Or they look at the movies and think, oh, I have a will. The attorney's just going to sit down and read it and tell people, here it is, here you go. That's not the case at all. And once someone finds out what probate is, what the will does, what dying intestate is without the will, and they see other people going through it, whether it's a family or friends, then they realize, no, this is not what I want my family to go through. And it's very time consuming. There's so much stress, emotional problems, family fighting. So if they have all that information and then they say, no, I'm not going to do it, yeah, it is very selfish of them. And I can assure you from the clients that have come in to me, they're very stressed about coming to me, and they tell me, like, I was so nervous, you know, I didn't know what to expect. And then after they go through it, they're like, wow, this is a lot more simpler than what I ever could have imagined. And you cannot tell me that you don't have any relief. They're just so happy it's done. They're like, I wish I would have known this. I would have done it a long time ago. And, I know my family's going to be taken care of now. And a lot of attorneys, as far as the cost for the initial one, I'm not going to say every attorney, but a lot of them are going to give you that consultation for free. So even if you just make that consultation and learn, you're going to realize, hey, I really need to get this done. And you're going to feel more relieved once you get more education on the topic. So yeah, come in your jeans, come in whatever you want to wear. A lot of attorneys too will do home appointments just to make you feel more comfortable too.
Right.
So you can ask about that.
And I can tell you that what the difference between what Joanne does and what I do, I'm not an attorney, I don't draft the documents, but I'll help you through the initial process so you're prepared to meet with the attorney. I think one of the things attorneys don't really like to do right away at the beginning is have to take out their yellow legal pad and start writing down names and dates and things like that. If we can get that done in advance, now you can really talk about what are your wishes, your goals, and the attorney can guide you through that process to make sure it's done in the best possible way. So we're not talking about it in this episode. We've talked about it in other episodes, but there are ways an estate planning attorney can guide their clients through a process so maybe you don't have to go through probate. Maybe there's a way we could avoid all this. Wouldn't that be great? And not having a will isn't the answer.
No.
So if you do get to the point of saying, you know what, I really do need to do this, that's one of the questions you might want to have for an attorney is just say, I watched this episode and the whole probate process, that wasn't so exciting for me. Is there a way we can avoid it and you can guide them through that process? So.
Yeah, there's lots of ways in Wisconsin. We're kind of one of the lucky ones, but every state has ways of avoiding probate. So ask your attorney, do we have transfer on death? Can we use a trust? Can we use marital property agreement? What about direct beneficiaries? Those are all key words that you should ask your attorney to see about avoiding probate. And they're going to come up with the best way for you because you are very much an individual and your case is not like everyone else's case. And they're going to tell you this is how you can do it.
And from my experience, the relatively small amount they're going to pay the attorney up front is far less than what they might have to pay in the end if they didn't do it right.
Yeah, that's correct. As I stated on the last show, anywhere from 3 to 8% of the total assets are going to be for costs. And that cost is not going to your family. So something as simple as a house at $150,000, 3% is $4,500 that could have went to your family but is now going to the court costs.
Thank you again, Joanne, for coming back and explaining this. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would say just go see an attorney. Go make that first step, feel at ease. Just get the information that you can. You can look at a lot of things online, but I caution with that because there's 50 states, there's 50 laws. Go to the one that deals with your particular state, get the information, and just give that last gift to your family, knowing that your assets are going to be taken care of and they're not going to have to go through the cost, the time, and the stress.
And that's a great way to say it. Don't think of it as a cost or time or, the angst of meeting with the attorney. Think of it as a wonderful gift for your loved ones. Great way to summarize it, Joanne. Thank you. When we talk about probate and estate planning, and this can be intimidating, I know that. But I think the work that I do is to help maybe alleviate some of those concerns. And I certainly can tell you the attorneys that I recommend, very much like Joanne, are really there to help you, to put you at ease, to give you the answers you need and to guide you through the process. They're professionals. They know what they're doing and they're going to make it as easy as possible, but also understand they're there to help you accomplish your goals because it's your life, it's your plan, and it's your legacy. And what a great way to carry on your legacy with a well-written estate plan. Thank you very much again for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next month.